So again, thank you everyone for coming. Today's workshop is going to be about the standard operating procedures, or SOPs for short, the value of using them, what they can be used for, and how to create them. Let's start with value of using SOPs. So once you get past that scary sounding name, the use of SOPs, it can help you with things that you have to do in your chapter immensely. Some of the reasons would be going from, as you see from the top right, onboarding. If you don't onboard volunteers well, they can end up struggling, and more likely than often they'll be gone. So that's definitely one of the things you want to do right. And SOPs can help with that, passing on knowledge. Another thing about SOPs is that they are like a repository of the knowledge of your chapter. If you or someone else decides to leave, everybody doesn't have to reinvent the wheel to try and figure out how did they do this. And then we have and this is something that there's a lot of data about, where people spend like 36% of their day looking for or consolidating information, and 44% of the time they can't find the information that they're looking for. Things like something like an SOP can help you minimize that kind of stuff, make things more efficient. And then, of course, with things being more efficient, you're going to have things are going to go faster. And then finally, you're going to be one of the things that SOPs does is assigns accountability to. This is one of my early attempts. This is like a couple of years ago. Before I knew about the term SOPs and stuff, this is what I was doing when I was managing a team of volunteers, figuring out how to put all the information so that they just wouldn't have these emails back and forth all the time, asking where's the file and who do I send this to and all of that stuff. So it was just like a who, what, where, when, why, how kind of thing. So we're going to use this and we're going to remake it with the better information that I've had. So after that, they sound amazing because you can do all of this stuff. But what are SOPs? SOPs are a way of communicating. And it's a way to communicate in your chapter. Every field kind of has a way to communicate. If you're looking at a film, there's a script and it's written in a particular format because it conveys information to all of the departments. And the way it's done is a way that easily conveys that information to them, and they're able to do the job that they need to do from that. And you also have the storyboard, which is another way, to convey some visual information, again, to help people with the task that they have to do. In our case, when you're dealing with volunteers, when someone says, hey, I would love to volunteer for your chapter, it's up to you to basically provide everything else, all of the information that they need. So an SOP, it's a way to communicate process documentation. And it provides all the key information like the scope, the purpose, what they're doing this for. It provides step-by-step instructions on how to complete the process. Also, it provides like additional resources like links to where they can access the file, or maybe logins, or who to get the login from. The whole thing is, the aim is to be efficient, to get quality output, and to have like some kind of uniformity in the performance. So while reducing miscommunication and failure to comply with any regulations. So to create an SOP, you can basically break it down into 7 steps. You want to make this easy to do. If it's hard to do, people are just not going to do it. Start with a template. Everybody's chapter is different. You can change things up a little bit. The next thing is to figure out why you need an SOP. You don't need an SOP for every single thing. So don't go crazy trying to document every single task in your chapter. There's certain things, and we will touch on this a little bit more. Third is to assign responsibility. Assigning responsibility for an SOP means that you don't have to do it all yourself. If everybody on the team have, like different SOPs that they're responsible for, then everyone can help out. You start getting to real nitty gritty. Step 4 is where you start defining the start, which is what's the first thing that you do. Stop, which is what's the final thing that you're going to do. And then the key steps, which would be basically how to get from start to stop. The step number 5, you specify the purpose. So you let people know why they're doing this, so that they don't just think that, oh, I'm just doing these steps and I have no idea what this is for. And it gives them an idea of what they should expect in the end. Then the inputs, which would be like the files, and usually, as I was saying, a lot of access to different things, like access to the Google Drive, access to maybe Google Meet, and things like that. And then the outputs. Then step number 6, you can always add details to each of the steps, as well as facts. These are things that can be added over time. You can always add as time goes along. And then you implement it and improve, because you've seen things that, oh, didn't expect this, I wasn't as clear on something, and you're just adding more detail, or maybe even taking away some. Starting with the first one, what would be on the template? Who, what, where, when, why, and how. You can ask yourself those questions that would kind of like jog your brain to figure out what should go in there. Sometimes you might have several questions in the same category. For instance, like where do I find the file? Where do I put the file once I'm done with it? I like put in the time. You don't have to. And there might be other things that you might want to put on your SOPs. So here's the blank template. At the top, you would put the name of the SOP, and then here are some of basically the things that we fill out. We'll see this taking shape as we continue through the steps. Next thing is to figure out what it's for. The thing is to like ask yourself how to, because these are processes telling people how to do something. That's a good way to start. One would be like how to script a video. Then you can like how to follow up with a prospect, or how to do a virtual event. Now, the last one, how to do a virtual event, that would have too many steps to just be one SOP. What you would do for something like that is break it down into smaller SOPs. For instance, like how to set up the event, maybe how to set up the Zoom link, all of the little stages. More than like about 8 steps, then probably a bit too long. So one of the things that I listed here, the mistake number 1, which is you're creating SOPs for things that don't need SOPs. If like you make an SOP for everything in your chapter, most people aren't going to use it. So you have to think to yourself, like, if I had this information, would I use it? If you're not going to use it, then it's likely that other people are not going to use it. When you make an SOP, you want it to be something that the situation calls for it, because it's not something that they would remember offhand. Some people would, like, after a while, definitely remember it, but
do you guys like make reference documents just for stuff people can reference, and then SOPs are more for something like some kind of set of actions you need to do for something?
yeah, the SOPs are more about doing particular procedures. You can have like other documents just for reference stuff, but you figure out what it is. When you're talking about reference documents, if they're procedures, then they should probably be like in an SOP. One of the good things about having it as a separate SOP is that people just don't have a lot of time to go through a huge many-page document. When they see something that large, they're just going to switch off and not even start. It's better to have things like a 1-page document so they can go directly to the procedures for that. They see it's just 1 page. Oh, I'm totally going to be able to go through it in 10 minutes, 15 minutes. They're more likely to look at it. It's the same kind of thing that we see with YouTube, Twitch videos, and TikTok. People know that it's going to be short. The next thing is trying to figure out who would be responsible. When you're creating an SOP, you have like either a subject matter expert, which is really really fancy way of saying someone who has already been doing this thing before. So if there's someone who's already been doing these tasks, then they're the best one to make the SOP. The SOP owner, as I was saying, you can put anyone else. They would fill it out based on what the subject matter expert is telling them. You can do this in a variety of ways. You can write it or you can record it. If you write it, usually it takes about 15 minutes. But if you record it, it might end up taking 25 minutes. The final version, however, should always be written. And the reason is because it's easier to update. However, once you have an SOP in the written form, it's nice to put other stuff. If you have diagrams, other things that can make things clear, it's nice to put those in. And you might even want to finally just do it as a video. People just seem to like videos. And I believe those things are going to become easier and easier to make. Even though they take a little more time, the fact that people might use them more often might be a good reason to do so. Here we have, so far we filled in the name of the SOP, the SOP owner, which is in red at the bottom there. Next, you do the start, which is the first thing to do, the stop, which is the last thing that you're going to do. And then one of the mistakes is, and I mentioned this before, is where people put too many steps. If you have a procedure that's going to take like 32 different steps, you need to break it up into several smaller SOPs. A good example would be if you were creating a video, one to script the video, another one about editing the video. When we create an SOP, a good rule of thumb is to have it be about like 8 steps long. When you have these smaller SOPs, you can combine them into something else. So here would be what we would have now. Under the key steps, the first line would be the first step. We would a programming department research in, get in the speakers for all of these different talks for the pipeline conference. One person would have already found all of these links to these articles. They would have already been searching online, getting all of these links and everything to interesting articles about what people were doing, on different VFX sites, on different CG sites. The person here using those links, the first thing that they would need to do, once they've gotten the file with the links and the name of the articles, they would go in, open them up, get all of the copy, and summarize it. That first step would be basically opening up that file and making sure that they have all of the article links there. Then the final thing would be they would have summarized all of the articles. It would be in one file. They would put that folder into their folder in the programming thing on the Google Drive. And then from that first one to the last, you can kind of figure out what each of the steps are to get to there. I actually ended up making a video for this. Just the text was not enough. So what I did was recorded myself doing it. I showed how in the browser, what I would be doing, what I'd be copying, pasting and everything. In some cases, it's just much clearer. Even though you want to still have this SOP as this, you would put in, and this is one of the things you would put under the output, you would put in the link to the video as well in something like this.
So Neil, in practice, would you say that this gets like, are there some SOPs that are just like, okay, I'm going to fill in like one line here and one line there, and other ones that become like 3 pages, or do you pretty closely try to follow the template?
Closely try to follow the template. If it's something that's going to be 3 pages, then separate that into more than one. Each of the step, you can go into a lot of detail. This is where people get hooked up. They try to put all of these scenarios they can imagine in their mind. If this happens, do this, and if this happens, do this, and it just becomes like super complicated.
You don't normally see the opposite case then, where like someone is not providing enough detail?
Once you've created this, you don't spend a lot of time trying to put in all of these hypotheticals. Once it's started to be used, then people will come back to you and say, and this is what I've been encountering. You didn't put it on there and I didn't know how to do it. You're going to give whoever's going to be using it, you're going to give them access to change things so that they can start adding, because that's where the test of this is going to be. You know, when people are following this and then they're like, this wasn't right, I kept having this error or something, they can make changes and align it with what's really happening. In this one, I said to summarize the article. You can go into detail on how to summarize the articles, but you can also just leave it up to the person, the user, to figure out how they want to summarize it. Do they want to do it all by themselves, or do they want to paste it into ChatGPT and say, summarize this article, and then paste back? The whole goal of this was basically to get speakers. And so we were going through the articles to find people who knew about what we wanted people to talk about. The goal was to get speaker. Are they able to speak about the things that we wanted, how to contact them, and things like that. Having something simple is going to definitely work out, especially in the case of one of the great things about having something like this is the ability to, if you have like volunteers and they suddenly become really busy and say, oh, I can't continue, someone else can easily jump in because they have all of the information on how this should be done. They can easily, when they open up the file, see where the other person has left off and just continue from there, because they can see all of the steps that had to be completed. This is kind of like the final step before basically sending the SOP out into the wild. So once you've like put in like all the steps, you should go back in and ask yourself, is this enough that someone would know how to do it? Ask yourself, if I only had 5 minutes to explain to someone how to do this, what would be the details I'd put? What would be the link? Or what would be the diagram or the pictures that I would put in? Maybe you might put a picture and you have like an arrow or something showing exactly where the button that you need them to use is. Text alone is not always going to like cut it. The facts, those might be, if this is the first draft that you're doing for this, you might not have anything to put in there. This might be information that you get like over time. Let's say that they were entering information using a system and there's an error that might come up. In the facts, you could probably put that. You could probably put, if it says error so-and-so, do this. Or if the instructions for what to do, that error message comes up, it's too long, then you might just say, see SOP so-and-so, and you just do another SOP for that. As things happen, you just add more and more facts over time. Here we have basically at the bottom here, in the facts here, I put the reason that we're doing, but this could probably be something you could put in purpose as well to let people know why they're doing this. And then finally, you use and improve. Have people use the SOP and allow them to make edits, as I was like saying before, to make things match reality. If things are happening that don't align with what you have in the SOP, they can just fix that up. In certain things, as I was saying, with summarizing, you can let the user choose their method, especially in a case like this where you have volunteers. Trying to be too rigid might be not the way to go. If you're using something like Google Doc, you have version history, you can always revert to an earlier version